Welcome to Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, the go-to podcast for financial advisors aiming to grow their assets under management, stand out in a crowded market, and retain assets nearly forever. Are you advising high net worth clients who own appreciated capital assets? Do you want to help them sell without losing a quarter, a third, or even more of their hard-earned profits to capital gains taxes? Then this podcast is tailored for you. Each episode brings you the latest strategies and expert advice from leading financial advisors, seasoned attorneys, and experienced CPAs. Learn how to maximize your clients' wealth, minimize their taxes, and supercharge your advisory practice with actionable insights. Join us on Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, where you'll gain the knowledge and tools to set yourself apart and achieve unparalleled success in wealth management. Subscribe now and empower your practice for a brighter, more prosperous future.
Hello, welcome to the Sterling Insights podcast. This is co-host Ray O'Connell of Altus Wealth and Tax, and I'm super excited today. I'm being joined by Chuck Cooper, Chuck, founder and president of Whitewater Consulting. He's an entrepreneur, a business owner, consultant, author, family man. Chuck, thanks so much for joining us today.
It is such a great honor to be with you today, Ray.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to get to your book in a little bit, but first, why don't you just give us a little bit of background for our audience here? What your journey's been from where you came from to where you're at today?
So the background's, it's a long history. My career spanned just over 30 years now. I had the opportunity and was very fortunate to grow up in a family-owned business. So I saw firsthand what it was like. I saw how businesses can really have an impact on family and on relationships. From that, I learned so much. Coming through that period of my life, we actually came through college and spent a few years with that business before the company was sold. But when I look at the last 30 years, starting from the growing up in a family business, most of my career has been spent owning and operating companies along the way. I've been a huge believer in regardless of the business I was a part of, I was just a believer that employees and people were one of the greatest assets that a company has. And so that has led me to the years of owning and operating those businesses, but it's also led me to where I am today with Whitewater Consulting. Whitewater Consulting is a business consulting practice that specializes in HR and also in succession and exit planning for small, mid-sized, and family-owned businesses. So today we get the honor to serve companies across the country in those areas.
Where'd you get the name from?
Whitewater Consulting. So what's interesting, Ray, in Charlotte, we have the Whitewater Center, which is the training grounds for a lot of the, for the Olympics, for the rafting. Sure. And that's my number one question that I get asked every day here in Charlotte is, are you part of the Whitewater Center? And as much as I want to say yes, I have to say no, I'm not. But the backstory to the company is, several years ago, I went on a canoe trip to Canada where we were gone for 3 weeks. About at the midpoint of that trip, we were coming up to what we thought was going to be a set of double rapids. And we decided at that point we would just take our canoes and shoot through those rapids. Well, as we went through the first set, there was no issue at all. But as we approached what we thought was the second set of rapids, it was actually a waterfall. And my partner and I were in the canoe, and we were paddling against each other. So we knew that we were coming up to something bigger than what we could handle. So we were trying to get out of the current, and we were not having success getting out. Fortunately, one of the guys that was in the second canoe had been through a very similar experience a few years before. He was able to give us very specific instructions on how to paddle, when to paddle, where to be paddling from. And we followed those directions. And within probably a minute to minute and a half, we were able to get our canoe straight and get out of the current over to safety. I'm not sure what the end result would have been, but I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. So what I took away from that experience was having real life experience is really important. Being able to take the wisdom and the knowledge that you gain along the way and being able to communicate that in a way that's effective, that's easily applied, and easily understood is also very important. And so that was kind of the backstory to Whitewater. I wanted to become that guide or to help my clients navigate their way of owning and operating their business and helping them take complex situations, bringing to them clarity and helping them be able to lead with confidence.
Wow, what a great story, and what a great name. So tell us a little bit. Who do you serve best? Who's your ideal client?
Our ideal client is, again, small, mid-sized, and family-owned businesses. And when I say
Okay.
that, what I mean is companies that have typically from about 10 employees. Our largest client we have today is just under 500 employees. So our
Wow.
sweet spot is probably 20 to 150, 20 to 200 employees. And that's one of the first boxes that we check. But in addition to the size, we really look at the ownership and the leadership level as well. So at the end of the day, we need for that business owner to be open-minded. We need for them to be coachable, and we need for them to truly value their people. And if they can check those boxes for us in that first meeting, then we've got some things that we can help them with and really provide great value to them.
Comes back to that people centric philosophy, right?
It
Yeah.
really does.
Let's talk a little bit about your book, the
Okay.
latest book, Chuck, The Family Business Blueprint, Creating Your Succession Roadmap. Why'd you write it? And what do you have to do to really, what type of endeavor is it writing a book? It's not easy, I know.
So I've written two books in the last 5 years. And the second book, the one that we're talking about, The Family Business Blueprint, that book really began to formulate from a conversation that I had with some students at Georgetown University. They had asked me in a seminar that we were doing there. Their question that afternoon was, my parents had built this amazing business, and the expectation is that I'm going to step in and take over the business at some point. The reality is, I don't want anything to do with the business. I want to be able to go do my own thing and create my own business to have a greater impact. And so their question was, how do I have that conversation with my parents? Well, I can never fully address a question for them, but that question I could never get out of my mind either. So I came back the following year in 2023, and we interviewed a lot of business owners across the country.
Mm.
And what we found from that was that 70% of the owners that I spoke with did not have any kind of succession or exit plan in place. And when you look
Wow.
at the numbers, you look at the numbers today, we're from the founding generation to generation two, we're losing about 70% of the businesses. And when
That's
you think
crazy,
about
isn't
the
it?
seven, so
Yeah.
you're losing 70% there, and you think about those small businesses are generating about 50% of the jobs in the US today.
Wow.
So those numbers, they aren't sustainable. They're not sustainable for the long term.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't sit still and not do anything. It's one that grew up in the family business and to see this happening in our society today. So I chose to write the book. I started writing it in March of 2024, and I was completely had finished writing the book in May of 2024. And then the book was published in August.
Wow. Now that seems like a real fast track. Now you've done it before, and you've
Right.
obviously, hearing your resume, have done a lot. So I guess that really had to help you put that into print, right? And the things I
You
really
know,
liked, Joe, was reading some of your examples. Joe Davis, Davis Manufacturing, Diamond Resources, the Bennett Farms. I mean, and you were very specific, pointing out the flaws in their succession plans. And when you were consulting with those students at Georgetown, hearing, they expect me to be in the business. That might not be for me. I mean, that's a tough conversation, isn't it? Yeah.
it
So,
is one first, it's a tough conversation to have first. And then second, there almost, I would say almost 100% of the time, there is a lot of emotion that comes out in those conversations, which is why a lot of times the business owners in the current generation, they just don't want to have the conversation with anyone else. And so oftentimes it
uh,
requires a third party to come in and be a facilitator to really manage those conversations so that everybody can have a voice, everybody can be heard, and so we can start to understand where everybody's coming from so that we can start to put the pieces together.
So if you were to talk to 10 business owners that are in that category, how many of those 10 are really open to a third party like yourself or some other consultant expert coming in and kind of, say, hey, I'm going to be the mediator here. We're going to get all of these ideas out on the table and we're going to come to a meeting of the minds.
I would say right now, from to answer your question, Ray, right now we're seeing that 30% of those 10 are having those
Okay.
conversations themselves. So it means you're 7 out of those 10 are not. And out of those 7, we're probably getting 4 of those to be able to say yes to a facilitator coming in to have the conversation. And the way that we're doing that is, one is we have some really great stories that we can share as far as companies that we have worked with and be able to share the results and the impact that we had versus those companies that did not have a third party come in and have those conversations and what happened to their business when they went through that, their exit, because it wasn't on their terms, it was on someone else's terms. When you're able to really look at it from that perspective, it has an impact on the business owner, and they recognize the importance of those conversations, which starts to open that door to start to put some pieces in place for their succession and their exit plan.
Awesome. And I'm sure some of those businesses you probably approached them initially, or they approached you 3 or 4 years ago, but they weren't maybe ready to have that hard conversation. And then maybe they've kind of come back and say, hey, let's get back with Chuck and really see if we can do this.
I think for many, the book has actually opened that door to where they realize they are of the age, they're baby boomer generation. They've not had
Okay.
those conversations, and they read the book and they see the stories and they're like, I see myself in these stories. I need to
I
reach
bet.
out and start to put something in place. And they've tried to do it on their own. A lot of them have tried to do it on their own, but they're finding that they're having challenges with that, which is why we're doing a lot of coaching in this area today.
Tell us about Dr. Samuel Harris. I mean, because he is one, or his group was one that you really got to be proactive, right? Taking a multi-step process there. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
That was an interesting experience to go through. And the reason that it was first of all, the doctor was very open to putting this in place. He was able to take time in his own life to elevate himself up from the day-to-day practice that he was involved in and elevate himself up so that he could start to think about things from a strategic standpoint and actually start to be proactive on putting these plans in place. He went through looking at his timeline that he had. He knew that that period was going to be the 3 to 5 year window. He knew who his successor was going to be. He put her through some tests and some situations to really find out whether or not she had the skills and the willingness to take on that next role of being the leader and the owner of the practice. So he had a very well defined process, so we were able to walk him through, and he was able to evaluate things and really come in in some cases we helped him with this, where we actually did some audits of his internal operations so that he could start to see what things were most important to him. So for his situation, he was passing it on to his daughter. It was most important to him that the practice be set up in a way that his daughter would have the best chance for success. So he wasn't focused so much on getting maximum dollars out. He was really focused more on passing this on to the next generation, protecting his legacy, and seeing his people and his patients that he had been serving for so many years see that continuity of care continue at the level of what their experience was over those years. So by going through that process, what we had to figure out, first of all, was what was most important to him, and then start to walk that path. Others that I talk to, they may go through a very similar process, but what's most important to them is maximizing the dollars. So again, the way that you go through that process is based on what is important to them, and that will lead them to the outcome that they desire.
So I'm assuming that there's a way that if you get in there early enough, that you can really help them move the needle. Is that a fair assumption?
That is correct. So often what we see, Ray, is we see the business owners, they've been so focused on working in the business and then focusing on the fires day in and day out that they don't have the chance to really look up and to be proactive. So everything has been done in a very reactive mindset. And so that's one of the first things we try to help them to do is to set expectations that your window is really a 3 to 5 year process. It's not a 6 to 12 month process, which is what we see typically today. Most business owners that are bringing their businesses for sale, they're 80% of those are not selling. So only 2 out of 10 are actually selling. But there's
Wow.
been somewhere between less than a year a preparation, getting their company ready for sale as well. So those are the things we are trying to help our clients realize that those are unrealistic expectations. These are realistic, and this is where we need to shift you from 6 to 12 months to a 3 to 5 year plan so that you can maximize the benefit that you get from the sale of the business.
I mean, so your goal would really be to have them reset that focus and move it out. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's the ideal. Now, a lot of
Yeah.
times we're not successful in making that happen. And a lot of times, as you know, when you start looking at baby boomers and looking at the age that we are, and I'm one of those, you start looking at kind of the things that can pop up that would be unexpected that could have a significant impact, whether it be death, disability, divorce, just those things, along with just having disagreements with your partners. All of those things can change and really expedite the process for the sale of the business or the succession. Those things surface coming up unexpectedly and forcing you to have to react to that in a very short time period and not having a plan. So again, those are the type of things that we share. We want our clients to be able to maximize that value and also to not look at succession or exit planning as the end of life. It's the end of a chapter, but there's a whole new opening, a new beginning that's ahead of them. And we want to help them be prepared for that transition as well.
Yeah. I was very impressed that you actually devoted much of the book to this after the sale thing, right? I mean, most consultants have a job, they're focused, and then they move on. Whereas, what happens after the sale? So that was impressive, Chuck. Yeah. I mean, you've done a lot of things that are over and above. The other thing being at the end of the book, after your conclusion, this whole set of tools and resources, right? Who kind of gives away part of their game plan? It just goes to show the consultative nature that you're using there. That's just terrific.
I appreciate those words, Ray. And that was actually something that we were very intentional about that. As we wrote the book and we looked to get it published, we actually looked at the idea, do we want to just give away part of the solution with the idea that it would really force the readers to call and say, we need you to bring in the missing pieces to the puzzle to make this work. Our approach to this whole thing from day one was really about, we want to make sure that we're trying to maximize and have the greatest impact on small, mid-sized, and family-owned businesses across the U.S. So let's give them the tools, let's give them the resources and the information and the stories to help them self-implement this so that they can have a greater impact on their family. And if they want to reach out to us for coaching, we're certainly glad, to be there to help fill that gap for them.
And I'm assuming just from the conversation here, Chuck, that your coaching will generally evolve to a multi-year process. Is that correct? Because you're kind of leading them, again, trying to, if their goal is to maximize values, to maximize that. If it's to maximize the people or relationships or the downstream in family succession, we're working on that. That takes a lot of time, doesn't it?
What we've tried to do in our approach is really try to break this up into two different pieces. So we tried to break it up on the succession piece so that it's really looking at identifying the successor, making sure they've got the tools and the resources and the coaching if necessary to help strengthen their ability to be successful as the successor to the business. So we're spending about 6 to 9 months on a 1 hour per month basis coaching them through this process. And what we're finding is once we get approach that 6 to 9 month mark, then the owners are starting to look at, all right, this is our succession plan. We're protected here in the event something happens to me. We've got policies and procedures very well documented on what that's going to look like. Now we're ready to start to look at the exit plan on how we can maximize value from the business. And as a transition to that, that is typically going to be at least a minimum of a 3 year process.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, what else haven't we talked about, Chuck? I'd like to get a little to your personal and spare time because I know you're a busy guy in a second here, but anything else related to the business, your philosophy regarding the business that you'd like to address that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I think one area on that, Ray, is I guess maybe a couple of things. First of all, as you're going through succession and specifically when you're focused on the exit plan, that is something that you really need a team of people, a team of advisors around you. One person's not going to be able to bring the area specialty and the skills and the experience to be able to help lead you down that path so that they can focus on not only what's important to you from an accounting or from a finance perspective, but also from a legal perspective, from an investment perspective after the sale. So you need to have really a team of probably, there's about 5 or 6 people that need to be around you that you can be using as advisors as you go through that process.
Perfect.
Because it's not just the business piece that we're looking at or that you should be looking at. It's the business plus your personal financials as well as your personal transition for that next chapter. So all 3 of these legs really kind of flow up. 3 legs to the stool actually move their way up into one comprehensive plan that you can really move forward on and have clarity as far as the sale of the business, your own personal finances, and then what you're going to do in that next chapter. So that, I think that's really something that's important for business owners to be considering. The last thing that I'll mention here is the valuation of your business. The valuation, you can look at the EBITDA, which is a number that is very, in a lot of ways, is easy to calculate. But really, when you look at the value of your business, there's about 80% of your value is not on your financial documents. This is based on the 4 C's, on the 4 capitals, which is your human capital, your people. It's based on your customer or client capital. And then also your structural capital. Do you have your systems and processes? Are those documented so that if something happens to you, some successor can step in and they have clarity on what those processes are? And then last is really your social capital, which is all about the culture of your organization and the way you're viewed in your community as well.
Do you work nationwide, Chuck?
So my book has allowed me to go nationwide. Right now, we are coaching a couple of dozen businesses across the country. We have people from California and Oregon to New York and down to Florida and Texas. So it's all over. There's not a one size fits all to these. Everybody's got a unique situation, and it's a much more in-depth process on the front end, which I think is probably one of the most important areas that we can focus on, is making sure that we have clarity on the front end from the owner to the next generation owner to their next set of leaders. Once we have some clarity around that, then we can start to move through a process that is much more efficient and effective for them versus not having had those conversations on the front end. A lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of counseling goes into that, but it's so important that you start there, build your foundation, and then you can grow up from that point.
Oh, that's awesome. This has been very interesting and helpful, Chuck. I'm really glad we got to spend this time. What do you do in your spare time? I know you do a lot of stuff. What's Chuck off the job?
Off the job, my wife and I love to travel. And what's really been interesting over the last couple of years is I've started, as part of our service offering, we actually offer some travel agency type services to our clients. It's just a way for us to be able to gain knowledge and insight on different places we want to go, different excursions that will allow us to go see the things we're really passionate about. So my greatest passions are my family, my grandkids, being able to really serve and support other entrepreneurs here in Charlotte and just be a mentor to them, and then the travel. So that's where I spend most of my time outside of work, is finding ways to connect and add value to people across the community.
Terrific. That's terrific. Once again, Chuck, thanks so much. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. This has been Ray O'Connell and Chuck Cooper for the Sterling Insights podcast. We'll talk with you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Sterling Insights. Stand out and supercharge your assets, where we provide the info you need from successful leading financial advisors, lawyers, and CPAs. Your hosts, Roger and Catherine Silk, invite you to learn more about Sterling Foundation Management by visiting sterlingfoundations.com.